what the forbidden Gospels reveal about the life of Jesus. Imagine walking through the dusty streets of a first-century Roman outpost and seeing a child who doesn't just play with mud, but commanded to breathe, a boy whose temper is as lethal as his miracles are divine. We've been conditioned to see the silent, holy years of a perfect infant. But the texts hidden in the sands of Nag Hammadi and the caves of the Middle East tell a story of a living Jesus who was terrifying, misunderstood, and deeply human in his divine outbursts. These aren't just myths. They are the fragments of a lost Christian landscape where the boundaries between life, death, and the very fabric of reality were far more porous than any modern Sunday school would ever dare to suggest. If you think you know the story of the carpenter's son, you're looking at a censored portrait that spent 2,000 years under a veil of ecclesiastical secrecy. The Roman world was a place of brutal clarity and sharp edges, where the survival of a family often depended on the favor of the gods or the strict adherence to local law. When we look at the infancy gospel of Thomas, we aren't just seeing a collection of magic tricks performed by a young Jesus. We are seeing a reflection of the social anxieties of a Jewish community living under the thumb of an empire. In this era, the Sabbath wasn't just a day of rest, it was a political and spiritual battleground. When a 5-year-old Jesus shapes birds out of clay by a stream, he isn't just playing, he is engaging in an act of creation that mirrors the divine breath of Genesis. But to the local elders, this was a violation of the law, a disruption of the order that kept their fragile world from collapsing. The reaction of the parents in the text, their fear and their immediate reporting of the child to Joseph, shows a culture where difference was dangerous. You can almost feel the tension in the air of a small village like Nazareth, where everyone knew everyone's business, and a child who could strike a playmate dead with a word was a liability to the entire tribe's safety. This isn't the meek and mild Savior of later centuries. This is a Mediterranean Jesus, fiery, protective of his honor, and profoundly aware of his own power even before he understood the weight of his mission. The culture of the time was one of honor and shame, and when Jesus is struck by a teacher or mocked by a peer, his response isn't to turn the other cheek, it is to assert his dominance. It sounds jarring to our modern ears, but for an audience in the 2nd or 3rd century, this proved his divinity. A God wasn't just someone who loved you. A God was someone you feared, because they held the keys to the natural world. The forbidden Gospels preserve this raw, unpolished energy of a deity in development. We see Joseph, a man clearly out of his depth, trying to discipline a son who reminds him that he existed before the dawn of time. The power dynamics of a traditional patriarchal household are completely inverted here, providing a fascinating window into how early alternative Christian groups tried to reconcile the humanity of a growing boy with the cosmic scale of a creator. Even the way these stories handled death is culturally specific. In a world where infant mortality was staggering and life was cheap, a miracle like the resurrection of a boy who fell off a roof wasn't just a parlor trick, it was a reversal of the ultimate tragedy. The Gospel of Nicodemus takes this even further, shifting the perspective from the streets of Galilee to the very gates of the underworld. The Roman and Greek influence on these texts is undeniable, as they describe the harrowing of hell in terms that feel almost like an epic raid. When Jesus descends, he doesn't just enter a quiet place of waiting. He breaks the brass gates and iron bars. This reflects a culture obsessed with the underworld, similar to the Orphic or mysteries that were circulating through the empire. The writers of these prohibited texts were competing for the hearts of people who lived in constant shadow, offering them a version of Jesus who was a cosmic conqueror, a figure who didn't just die for sins but literally kicked down the doors of the afterlife to drag his ancestors back into the light. There is a profound loneliness in the way Judas is portrayed in these lost scrolls, specifically in the Gospel of Judas, which was only rediscovered in a meaningful way a few decades ago. In the cultural context of the early Gnostics, the world we see, touch, and feel was considered a prison created by a lesser, ignorant God. This flips the entire script of the New Testament. In this version of reality, the other disciples are the ones who are lost, trapped in the physical rituals of animal sacrifice and rote prayer. Jesus laughs at them not out of cruelty, but out of a sort of weary recognition that they don't see the great generation beyond the stars. But Judas is different. He is the one who stands up, the one who can actually look into the eyes of the Master, even if he has to turn away from the sheer brilliance of what he sees. The dynamic here is a total departure from the traitor narrative. It's a secret pact between two people who know that the only way to save the spirit is to destroy the body. The social structure of these Gnostic groups was often clandestine. Existing in the margins of the growing great church, they prized gnosis, or knowledge over blind faith. And you can see that reflected in the dialogue when Jesus tells Judas he will be cursed by the other generations. It reflects the lived experience of these early heretics who are being pushed out of mainstream communities. They saw themselves in Judas misunderstood, hated by the ignorant masses, yet possessing the ultimate secret. The text describes a luminous cloud and a realm that no angel has ever seen, using language that sounds more like modern science fiction than ancient theology. It's a glimpse into a high-stakes intellectual culture where people were trying to figure out the software of the universe, believing that Jesus was a visitor from a higher dimension who came to provide the exit codes for the human soul. Think about the atmosphere of Egypt in the 3rd and 4th centuries, where many of these texts were found. It was a melting pot of Hermeticism, Greek philosophy, and various strands of Judaism. The Apocalypse of Paul taps into this by providing a visceral, terrifying map of the afterlife that would eventually influence Dante's Inferno. In this culture, your social status in life didn't matter as much as your adherence to specific moral codes within the church. The punishments for the witnesses diakons who ate the offerings. Readers who didn't follow the commandments show a community that was deeply concerned with internal corruption. They were using fear not just to convert pagans, but to keep their own leaders in line. The imagery of the river of fire with people submerged to different depths based on their specific gossip or sexual sins tells us exactly what the social anxieties of the time were. It was a world where your neighbor's evil eye or a hidden grudge was seen as a spiritual poison that would manifest as a worm in your nostril in the next life. These texts weren't prohibited just because they were weird. They were prohibited because they were dangerous to the organizational structure of the church. A Jesus who tells you that you don't need a priest because the light is already inside you is a Jesus who can't be controlled by an institution. The Gospel of Thomas the Saint's Gospel, not the infancy. One is famous for the line, "Split a piece of wood, and I am there." That kind of radical omnipresence was a threat to the bishops who were trying to build a centralized Roman religion. When we read these fragments today, we are listening to the suppressed voices of people who experienced the divine as something wild, unpredictable, and deeply personal. They lived in a world where the veil was thin, where an angel might visit you in Tarso and tell you to dig up a marble box under your floor, and where the living Jesus was still actively speaking through visions and secret scrolls. The most striking part of these accounts is the Sunday relief. In the Apocalypse of Paul, we see a moment where the suffering souls in the abyss cry out, and Jesus, moved by the prayers of the Archangel Michael and the saints on earth, grants them a day of rest from their torments every week. This reflects a very specific cultural shift. The Sanctification of Sunday in the Roman Empire. It's a piece of fan fiction with a purpose that gave people hope that their prayers for their deceased loved ones actually did something. It turned the afterlife from a static, eternal state into something that could be negotiated through the community of the living. It shows a culture that valued the covenant between the generations, where the living had a responsibility to cool the fires for the dead. This is where we see the roots of what would become the cult of the saints and the complex rituals of the medieval church. History is often written by the winners, but the sand has a way of preserving the truth of the losers. The fact that these Gospels survived at all, buried in jars, hidden in walls, passed down in secreties, a testament to how much they resonated with people. These weren't just academic exercises. They were the primary scriptures for thousands of people who found the standard stories too simple or too restrictive. They wanted a Jesus who understood the darkness of the world, a Jesus who had a childhood, a Jesus who had a complex, even difficult relationship with his Father. They wanted a Savior who didn't just walk on water, but who knew the secret names of the stars and the hidden paths of the abyss. This alternative history isn't just a curiosity. It's a missing limb of the human story, a reminder that the past was just as messy, vibrant, and contested as our present. We often look back at ancient civilizations and see them as statues cold, white, and distant. But these texts bring the color back. They show us the mud, the anger, the secret laughter of a teacher, and the desperate prayers of a mother like Mary, who in the infancy gospel has to tell the neighbors to keep their children away for their own safety. It's a domestic drama played out on a cosmic stage. It's a reminder that every orthodoxy we have today was once a heresy fighting for its life, and every prohibited book was once a treasure for someone seeking a reason to keep going in a world that felt like a prison. The Forbidden Gospels don't just reveal a different Jesus. They reveal a different ESA version of humanity that wasn't afraid to ask the hardest questions about why we are here and what happens when the light finally goes out. I'm genuinely curious about how this version of the story sits with you. We've all grown up with one specific image of these events, and it can feel almost like a betrayal to look at these other accounts. Or it can feel like a massive relief to see the imperfections and the raw power that was edited out. Does seeing a more human and impulsive Jesus change how you view that era, or does it make the whole history feel more grounded to you? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, not just as viewers, but as a community of people who love digging into the parts of history that were meant to be forgotten. If you've got a story about a forbidden or hidden piece of history you've discovered in your own life or research, please share it. It's those kinds of conversations that make this channel feel like a real gathering place for the curious. And hey, if you feel like this kind of deep dive is something you want more of in your life, it would mean the world if you joined our circle here by subscribing. We're trying to build something that goes beyond the surface, and having you along for the ride makes all the difference. Tell me what you'd like to see next. Is there a specific lost civilization or a banned text that's been on your mind? This channel is as much yours as it is mine, and I can't wait to see where we go next.